Hey, everybody. This is Taz Street with Positive Out Loud. Today, we have a very exciting guest on our show. We have Mikael Luman. He is a mystic genius when it comes to healing, um, and it could be instantaneous healing at that. It doesn't happen all the time, but we have seen it happen in his group. So I wanted to bring him on the show because I wanted everybody to open up their mind to the possibilities of healing instantaneously, of healing in an easy, joyful way instead of having to go through suffering. That could be from mental or physical suffering or spiritual suffering. So, Mikael, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit about what got you into this modality and what happened with you? What type of issues did you have to help you to get you to a point where you healed yourself?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I guess what got me into it was that I didn't have any other options, right? So, I had a back surgery, and I needed to have a second back surgery, and then I found out that I needed to have both my hips operated on because I had bilateral impingements and torn labrums. And I'd already suffered through 2.5 years of feeling like I was getting kicked in the groin all day long, and I'd lost 3 inches off of my quad, and I was trying to work, and I was falling off ladders, and I was thinking that the first back surgery would solve all the problems. And then 3 weeks after that, I re-herniated the same disc, and then I found out it wasn't just the back, it was the hips as well. And
so what happened to your back and hips? How did that all start?
well, looking back, I would say that when I was 15 and I broke my kneecap, and then I started making poor life choices, that I created disharmony and never really found balance. And so I continued to have more lower body injuries. So I had a surgery on my knee when I was 15 and 16 and 17, and right. And so 7 right knee surgeries, 2 left knee surgeries, 2 broken ankles, a torn quad, 2 torn hamstrings. It's really the back was just the next thing, and in line to kind of to go out.
And so you got to a point where you were just tired of it all.
I got to a point where the time frame that I was given, or the options that I was given, didn't work with the expectations that I had. Because up until that point, there was always another doctor's appointment, whether it was 3 weeks away or a month away or a surgery scheduled or whatever it was. But at this point, I was done with the next doctor's appointment. And the hip surgeon wanted me to do my back first and then spend 6 months getting into shape so that he could do my hips. And I suffered long enough. And then I found out that my wife wanted a divorce. And so in that moment of no other options, I left town. And you're from the Pacific Northwest, right? So I live in Portland. I drove to Bend, and I hiked about, 5 or 10 miles up the Deschutes River, and I put all my pain in a rock, and I threw the rock in the river, and I went up there not being able to walk upright, and I came back fine. The day before, I'd tried to paddleboard, and I couldn't stand up on a paddleboard, and I drove back to Portland and paddleboarded across the Columbia River.
Wow. So first of all, what made you decide to put your pain in the rock? I mean, what type of thinking, what type of things were you researching or learning, or
so
what made you do that?
And I would say that so I spent the first portion of my life addicted to drugs and alcohol. So I had 10 years of addiction. I spent a couple years in prison. I've been clean for 19 years now. And done a lot of stuff, since then with my life. But right around probably 2011, I started, probably after my 5th knee surgery, I started to realize that there had to be something else going on besides what everyone was saying was going on, right? Like, it wasn't just that I played sports, or it wasn't just that I played too hard, or whatever it is that everybody tells you. Mm-hmm. And I started to understand a little bit more about frequency and vibration, and how the not so physical stuff plays into the physical stuff, right? And so I started to understand that, maybe there was more disharmony in my body than anything else. And I even started to experiment with working with athletes, producing, patches that were programmed with certain frequencies and vibration, and, saw a noticeable difference in performance with those things. But even though I started to understand it, I wasn't in a position to accept it necessarily for myself. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't until, this 2.5 years of pain, and getting to the point of, I think I understood enough that maybe all of this stuff that I was feeling wasn't, and I don't like to necessarily use the term wasn't all mine, because once you're feeling something physically, it is all yours. But I think I started to become aware of how I interfaced with reality, right? Like that I was highly empathic, operating very sympathically. And it was kind of interesting, because I just before this, a month or two before this, I remember I was in my backyard, and I could feel like my heart beating fast, but it wasn't my heartbeat. And I found that I was picking up on other people's heartbeats, right? Because I could test my pulse, mm-hmm. and knew it wasn't mine, but I could feel a heartbeat. And I noticed that I was picking up people's heartbeats that were walking on the sidewalk behind my house, right? And so I started to understand that, oh, well, maybe because of my experiences, I've been taking on everybody else's stuff and claiming it. And so the moment when I healed myself, it wasn't even that the pain went into the rock. The rock just allowed me to let go of all of that stuff and be okay knowing that it wasn't going to go into somebody else, right? Because I'd worked so hard taking it all, right? I didn't quite understand how it worked yet, and I didn't want it to go back to the sender, right? Mm-hmm. And so I already understood that I could program a rock or a bracelet or whatever with a frequency. So I figured the pain would just go into the rock, and then I could throw the rock in the river and didn't have to worry about it getting into anybody else.
Well, it's really fascinating about how you're talking about how you were able to feel other people's heartbeat. That's how empathetic that you are, that you can feel somebody else's heartbeat. That's very fascinating. I like that.
Yeah. And not that I and not that I do that anymore, right? But it's all these things that, things happen all the time that help us to mm-hmm. make it to that next level, right? Like if that wouldn't have happened, then I never would have been in that place that I was able to heal myself. But there were small things that took place before that moment that allowed me to do it. Like even in my addiction, right? There was things that happened that built my knowing in what was possible. Like I could dance for 12 hours, right? Which, whether I was on drugs or not, it was still my physical body. So in 2007, when I decided to go on a 12,000-mile bicycle tour around the United States, in my mind, I was thinking, well, of course I can go ride 125 miles a day every day, right? Because I can dance 12 hours, right? So, and if I'm doing it while, in training for a few months, right, it should be, that much easier. But I don't think that I ever limited myself. I mean, we always limit ourselves, but I've always believed that anything was possible, right? So everything that happened.
You think you kind of believe this ever since you were a little kid, or?
Yeah, I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in whatever limited understanding that I, had at the time, because I mean, I still have to continue to build that belief in what's possible, because possibilities keep changing all the time.
Can you tell me a little bit what you mean by that? Possibilities?
Well, so I guess the most amazing thing in the experience of when I healed myself was that after that, I found that I was able to focus my intention on other people, and they were able to heal as well.
So by healing yourself, you healed every single part that was hurting.
I would say pretty much.
Wow.
I mean, there's a few things that, like, I still have like a dent in my quad from where I tore my quad, right? That didn't necessarily instantly heal. But I never thought I was going to be able to run again, because I've had 7 right knee surgeries and 2 left knee surgeries, and I really haven't run since 2007, right? But I just did a half marathon last week, and my knees are fine, right? Mm-hmm. So for the most part, yeah, everything kind of just was better.
That in itself is pretty incredible, I think, because I think it's hard for a lot of people to open themselves up to the fact that you can heal instantly.
Yeah.
And so what type of response do you get when you're actually doing this with people online?
Well, it's interesting, because the response that you get is a little bit different than the response that you would expect. Mm-hmm. Because it is hard to grasp. I mean, it's still hard for me to grasp. And if I didn't see it every day in other people, I probably would have by now convinced myself that it didn't happen for me.
Right.
Right? Because it is a lot to grasp, and it's different than what we've been led to believe, all along. And I'm fortunate and blessed and lucky, or whatever you want to call that awareness that came with the experience, right? Because through the experience, I all of a sudden had an increased awareness, and I saw things at a little bit different level, so that I could make sense of a lot of it, right? Like I not only did I instantly heal myself, but I progressed in my understanding quite rapidly through that experience.
Because you knew that it could happen, because it happened to you and you did it, right?
Right.
The knowing, right?
Yeah. And so as soon as you know something is possible, it changes the whole perspective of it. Right. And so if I didn't experience it myself, I would, the closest I could get would be just a high level of belief. Right? Because even if I learned a system, right, it would still be somebody else's system and somebody else's knowing, and me trying to get there with not having that personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think that part of that awareness was that I all of a sudden started seeing things how they were, if that makes sense.
Because I listen to a lot of videos, like because I've been to Dr. Joe events where they do healing. There's a lot of healing going on there.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to this woman today talk about how she had an experience when she went into a healing circle, and she saw this being that was about 10 feet tall, and because she had a lot of issues going on with her neck and her spine and that sort of thing, and her legs, and this being just took her legs and went and was moving them, and it was hurting her, but all of a sudden she just felt like this crack after he was done, of her fascia just going into place, and there was no more pain after that. I mean, when you hear stories like that, I mean, people generally are not going to make up crazy stories like that.
Yeah.
And especially when we're talking on the video for everybody to hear.
Yeah. Well, and you know what, I've to the best of my knowledge at this time, right? I mean, and I'm always changing a little bit of my understanding, but I think healing is always instant. Like, I think it's always happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's just our own perception of reality and our own fears and the way that we interface is what keeps it from happening, right? So the body's always trying to instantly heal itself, and we're the ones that slow it all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And sometimes we slow it down to the point to where it's going backward, right? Backwards, right? Because we're aging. So whether it's tapped into by supplementation or diet or exercise or energy medicine or whatever, the doctor, right? Whatever it is that
Mm-hmm.
increases that, right? It only works because the body's always trying to do it. Right. So when I focus my attention on somebody and they instantly get better, I'm not having to go against the system. I'm not having to do something that is out of the question possible, right? I mean, it's possible because it's meant to happen. So all I'm really having to do is just allow the person the space for it to happen long enough till they believe it's happening.
Right. There have been some pretty phenomenal testimonials on your group, for sure.
Yeah.
The woman with the neck issues, for how many years was she in pain?
9 years.
9 years, yeah. And then all she did was watch one of your videos. She didn't even talk to you one-on-one. She didn't go into a group healing or anything. She was just watching your videos online that you had already posted, and the pain went away, right?
Yeah. Well, and we ended up doing a one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the video started it. And then, I mean, her whole life has changed now. I mean, she had a horse that has a broken pelvis. It's been like 4 years, and I helped her horse, and her horse is walking fine now. And right, wow. Everything's changed for her. And it's funny because I had a blind lady whose vision came back, and it was kind of like a similar situation. She noticed something during a group healing, right? And she's like, you're going to think this is crazy, but I felt this tingling or this twitching in my eye, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, well, and it's funny because up until that point, I thought that eyes were difficult, and it was just my perception or my understanding up to that time, right? And I'm like, well, let's just try and see. And I wasn't necessarily even expecting.
Let's just try and see.
Oh, that's kind of funny, huh? Yeah. And it's too bad because I didn't start filming it until after it was already back to like 70%, because I really wasn't expecting it to happen.
Was she totally blind?
In one eye. She had no vision.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And how long did that take?
I don't know, 5 minutes.
That's just.
I mean, you've seen the videos, you've seen it. It's and you've experienced it too. So
I have. Yeah.
It's the time is only relevant because we're having to grasp something that is hard to grasp. So the amount of time it takes is probably a second. The amount of time it takes for somebody to grasp it and really to hold on to it is 5 or 10 minutes, right? Because there's all that back and forth.
And then all the different emotions or sensations or things that people feel on top of that, right?
Yeah. And I mean, people's experiences are all different because of the way that they've interfaced with reality up until this point, or because some people are more sensitive and some people might be more out the top and some people might be more out the bottom, right? So their experience is different, but the results are all the same.
So when you're focused and you have that intention, did this just come naturally to you? How did this all come up for you?
So, I mean, it has kind of evolved, but only because after I instantly healed myself, I all of a sudden knew that things could be instant. But then I went on this journey of exploration, trying to figure it out. But everybody that I crossed paths with was trying to convince me that everything took time. Right? So, I mean, if I came across a practitioner that did tapping or that did body code or body talk or all these different modalities, right? They were trying to convince me that what I had experienced wasn't correct, right? That you have to do all these things, like you have to clear up the emotions, or you have to go back in time, or you have, right, like all this stuff. And all I was looking for was validation that I healed myself instantly.
But you didn't have to do all those things that you were saying people were talking about. You didn't do any of those things.
Right. And so I kind of degressed in a way and started to think that that's the way that things needed to happen, only to find that they didn't need to go. Right. It took me a little bit of time to build my confidence up to where things could be instant.
And for me, even though I love Dr. Joe's work and everything, but for me, it feels like, I got to do this meditation. I got to do this for an hour and really get into it and really have this vision. And yeah.
Well, and you really have to understand where people are coming from, right? Like Dr. Joe does amazing stuff. His experience was that he had to get himself into the place where he was able to heal himself, but not instantly. Like
it took time. Yeah, it took a while.
Right. Like he rebuilt his body through the same type of thing, right? Through hyper focusing and not allowing anything else into that space while he was doing it. So his understanding, is through that approach. And then also he's very scientific because of his background of, being a chiropractor. And, then after his healing experience, I mean, he's gone back to school and he's got a couple other master's degrees now, right? But very, very physical things, right? Like if we're trying to get to the way, like if everything is either a particle or a wave, right? And we know that at the moment when the wave is allowed to create, anything is possible, right? Then all of a sudden the particles slap back, come back into place, right? So he's trying to push the particle to get the wave to do something different, right? But we can just change the information, and then the particles do something different, right? Like affect the wave, and then reality changes instantly.
It reminds me of, when they talk about what Jesus would heal people instantly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if
Excuse me.
and whether you believe in them or not, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can use it as stories, because people use stories from all times in history, right? But let's just say that it takes a certain amount of consciousness for healing to take place, right? And let's say that's 1,000, right? Well, let's say Christ or Jesus, right? He came into the situation with 1,000 because he understood everything. So he could compensate for somebody not bringing anything other than just themselves into the situation, right? So let's say that I'm at 9 or 700, right? I can offset a lot of disbelief, right? But there's still, to get that to 1,000, there's still that little bit of wiggle room, right? And I can always build more belief, or I can always bring in more knowing, right? But I'm still limited to my experiences up until this point, because I don't understand everything, right? Now, the more that it happens, the more that I'm able to help people, and the more miracles I see, the more effective then I will become in other situations, right?
Absolutely right. So how long have you been helping other people?
So really this time right now, it's been about, what is it, June? It's been a couple months, 5 or 6 weeks. I put myself out there last year, and things didn't really turn out the way that I was expecting, and I wasn't quite in the place to overcome everybody's fears that they were bringing into the situation. And so I had to take about another year to just kind of work through some stuff personally, to where I'm in a better place now.
Yeah, because I know that you can be on this group healing online with, I don't know, lots of people there, and you'll just go from one person to the next.
Yes.
and help create these miracles.
Yeah.
And you'll go for about 4 hours sometimes. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I could probably go longer, but only because, that's what I love to do. Some people would think that, it would be draining and I would get tired, but it energizes me. Like, after doing a 4-hour, live, I'm looking for more people to help, right? Because I'm on a roll.
Well, there's nothing more fulfilling than helping people, help their lives get better in whatever, shape or possible way that could be. That's very meaningful.
Yeah. And I've come to understand enough that I'm able to step out of the situation and not involve myself in their healing.
Are you talking about how long it would take, or
or just if I was still empathic but operating very sympathically, then I would want to be part of whatever their experience is, right? And then I would run the risk of taking on their stuff, right? But I know that it doesn't have anything to do with me, right? And all I'm really doing is I'm presenting an option or an idea to somebody, and just allowing them to decide if they want to grab hold or not. So
Right.
I would say that I'm a silent cheerleader. Right, but I'm not doing the running, I'm not doing the event, right? I'm not doing the healing, right? I'm just asking the person to do what they're already capable of doing.
Oh, that's interesting. I get what you're saying now, right?
Yeah. Because if I was doing the healing, then I probably couldn't do 4 hours in a row or 20 people at a time or whatever that is, right? Because it would wear me down.
Right.
Because I would be doing something. But all I'm doing is just encouraging the person to do what they're already capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a massage therapist or a Reiki or anybody like that. It takes a toll on them after a while.
Yeah. And if if I was touching people, it would be a little bit more difficult to take myself out of the equation. Right? Because as soon as we put our hands on somebody, we think that for sure we have to have something to do with it because we're touching the person. Or even if I did something for 60 minutes, right, it would be a lot more difficult to keep myself out of that situation because 60 minutes is a huge commitment to somebody's well-being, right? So you probably would start to relate with them after that amount of time, right? So there's probably several reasons why I like it to be instant, right? Partly because I don't necessarily have the attention span. I mean, part of my personality is I like instant gratification, right? But I'm also pretty good at hyper focusing for really short amount of times. But I don't think I can hold that hyper focus for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, right? I can hold it for like a minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah, because when people meditate, or when I meditate and I'm going through the visualizations, when I first started doing it, it was really difficult. But once after a while, after practicing it, it gets easier. But it's still, there's times where it's like, gosh, when is this going to be over?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it is practice as well, right? Like, I mean, just how pain and all that can be negative, right? I mean, that's a practiced and a learned behavior.
Right.
Right. As soon as something has started to become a certain way, then sometimes it's easier just to keep it going that way than to try and come up with a possibility of it being any other way. Right. So as soon as the possibility of it being different comes into play, I mean, you still have to work at that new possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, whether that takes 30 seconds or 5 minutes or 2 weeks, right? It's still kind of all the same, but time confuses us because we want to spread everything out, on time. But it's still the same thing, whether you look at it, in 1 second of time or over 2 weeks, right? It's still the same, it still comes down to choice. Like, I present an idea, a person makes a choice. I present another idea, they make another choice. I present the next idea, they make another choice, right? And then all of a sudden, that momentum builds, right, to where they might have had no other possibilities when we started, and now all of a sudden, wow, all this is possible. And then when there's all those possibilities again, you still have to hold that space long enough for them to accept this new life of unlimited possibilities, because that's scary as well.
Right. Yeah, because in that case, there's going to be a lot of things that are changing in that person's life.
Yeah. Sometimes it's it's almost as difficult to have unlimited possibilities as it is to have no possibilities. Right? Like when I was in pain for 2.5 years, there was not much expected of me. As long as I got up in the morning and went to work and made it home, right? I didn't necessarily have to participate as a parent or do work around the house or whatever it was, right? It became fairly easy just to exist in that, way of living, right? So then all of a sudden, if there's no pain, right, then I'm going to have to live a more productive life, and because people are going to expect more from me.
You're going to have to be more involved, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Can you explain a little bit? I like when you talk about the slideshows, how things can change. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So part of my awareness of when I healed myself is like, how is this even possible? Right? Because our perception of healing is that it's a process. Right? Like if we think that life is a constant, right? But reality is like a slideshow, right? Like each moment in time is its own moment in time. But that's how miracles can happen, right? But that's also how, probably forgiveness works or repentance works or whatever that process is of us letting ourselves off the hook for everything that has happened in the past and allowing us to be perfect in that moment, right? Because one moment I had torn labrums and the next moment I didn't. It wasn't like they were healing, right? Just the information changed, and so the energy did something different. So reality was different in that next slide, right? Not torn labrums, not herniated disc, right? So then it was just a matter of holding it there long enough for that knowing to stay, right? Because the body still holds the memory or the information of the past,
right?
So, and Dr. Joe talks about this too, right? That emotion in the moment has to be great enough to override all that negative thinking, right, of the past. But that's one of the reasons why forgiveness is so powerful, is that allows us to detach from everything that has happened, right? Like if we forgive ourselves and we forgive others, we don't have a connection to the past.
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah. And it's difficult to grasp and it's difficult to see because it's on so many different levels. Right? Like consciously we can think one thing, and then subconsciously the subconscious is like, yeah, right. We're going in opposite directions here, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So we're like icebergs. Right? We can only comprehend the 5% that's above the water. We don't see the 95% that's below the surface.
That's where all the unlimited possibilities are, right?
And then also the blocks to all the unlimited possibilities as well. Right? So that's why it's always that kind of give and take, right? Because I'm knowing that it's possible, and the other person is only believing that it's possible, right? So the results with things that are more physical tend to be a little bit quicker and a little bit stay a little bit longer, because we can see that something's changed. So somebody that can't walk up and down the stairs, as soon as they start walking up and down the stairs, it's done, because they're not going to convince themselves that they didn't do it, right? The subconscious isn't going to say, oh, nothing's changed. So that's why when I had a reference of not being able to paddleboard, it was the day before, right? So there wasn't a ton of time between when I couldn't paddleboard and then all of a sudden I could.
Right.
Now, had I been able to paddleboard in the past, I still could have gotten away with saying, oh, well, yeah, but, because we do this all the time, right? We're like, oh, well, yeah, but I did paddleboard 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like even when I was driving back and didn't have pain, I still could say to myself, yeah, but you know what, there's been times when I've been able to drive and not been in pain, or there's been moments in time when it didn't hurt at a 10, right? So it wasn't until the paddleboarding that it really stuck, right? Because I had a direct reference with no other ways to justify it to myself.
That's kind of what happened when you were working on my foot.
Yeah.
It didn't heal instantly, but I noticed like the last couple of days that the majority of the pain is gone.
Yeah. And I would probably say that it heals instantly every time.
Right.
And then we get to choose what level of we want to keep it at.
Right. So tell us a little bit about some of the groups that you have going on.
All right. So I have I have my own my Mikael, which is Mikael D Luman Facebook fan page. I've created a group that's Mikael D Luman Focused Intention on Facebook, and this group is just where people can go and learn more about what I do, but also I've got a bunch of videos posted there, and then a bunch of testimonials, and also people that have experienced the same thing that I've experienced and are able to, share their stories and experiences. I've just started a new group that's called Mikael D. Luman Luminescence, and in this group is going to be where I'm going to be teaching people not only to heal themselves, but also how to do what I do so that they're able to help others heal as well.
So the regular group that you have, the Focus Intention, can you tell people a little bit about some of the videos that you have there already to help them out?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a bunch of webinars that I've done.
Right.
Where I explain my story, I demonstrate some one-on-one stuff, I demonstrate some group stuff, and then I have some, a bunch of one-on-one videos where I'm just, focusing on people that have different things going on that are getting better.
And I know you have the healing videos that you created just on your own for people just to watch if they have something going on, that they can just watch those videos.
Yeah. And so, I have some of those there too, where the healing is actually in the video.
So can you tell me a little bit about what your membership site is going to entail? What exactly would that?
So with the membership, what I'm doing is I'm doing a $27 monthly membership that will allow people to participate in healing, whether it's one-on-one or group. They will be able to receive healing, but also receive the information that they need in order to heal themselves. So whether it's instant or it takes some time, all of that will be included in that membership. And then I have the $97 a month membership, which is going to be healing, but also where I will be teaching people how to do what it is that I do so that they can help others heal. And I think that the most effective way to kind of heal, but to then continue to heal is through helping other people. Right. Sometimes we need to see it work for other people in order for us to really believe it ourselves.
Which you can see on your group, the Focus Intention. I mean, there's tons of videos on there showing as you're going through the process with them of what's going on and how they're healing in just within a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like I said earlier, if I didn't continue to see this every day, I would have convinced myself by now that it never happened.
Or that it was temporary, right? Or something.
Right. Yeah. So the most powerful way to, like, so people say it all the time. Oh, I can help other people heal, but I can't heal myself. But really, that's just their perception, right? Because when you are helping other people heal, you are helping yourself heal as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was like the number one thing that we learned when we went to the live event with Dr. Joe, is whenever there were so many people who were doing the healing that weren't inside of the circle, that were the healers that were healing themselves in the moment as well.
Yeah.
It was happening all the time. Question for you on your membership, the $27 a month one, I would kind of hop on that right away, because the less people you have in there,
Yeah.
more you're going to get from you, and the more healings you're going to get with not as many people in there in the beginning, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I've been telling people is it probably is beneficial to get involved early, because this is the beginning. I mean, there's not a ton of people, right now, and eventually it'll probably look a lot different. My goal is for it never to be something that people aren't going to be able to afford or to be involved in, because I mean, that's really not what this is all about for me.
Well, I can see, I mean, now that you're going to start teaching people how to do this, I can see so many people branching off from there and just creating phenomenal lives of helping other people. I mean, it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing, I would imagine.
Yeah. And like I've said, it's only a matter of time before some really big things start to happen. I mean, I've been working with some people that have MS. I've been working with, and I think you've been on one of the lives where, Trisha, she was paralyzed in 2013, and she's able to start kicking her leg. Right. I mean, I've already had the blind lady whose vision came back. I mean, there's been some pretty amazing miracles already, but it's not going to take long for some of these other things that right now might seem to be a little bit difficult to start to really change. And, I've got somebody too that suffered a stroke a few years ago that I've been, working with. Or I have Brad, who has been in a wheelchair for the last 11 months. I mean, I was able to get him to stand up for the first time in 11 months and to walk a little bit, right? But it's not going to take that long before, Brad's able to get up and just walk around as if it never even happened.
That's just incredible, Michael.
Yeah.
That's wow. I mean, I think the more that you challenge your own beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And you make and you're open to knowing that this is going to happen, and you see it happening, the more powerful it'll be. Well, not that it's not powerful already, but yeah.
Yeah. And the more people that see it, I mean, that all factors into it. The more people that I'm able to teach, I mean, we can get a group of 8 focusing on somebody, and I'm sure that the benefits or the effects will be greater than if it's just me, myself.
Right. One thing I would like to do, if you're open to this, is just take a snippet of this video and put it on my page and show people a little bit about what you do. If you want to like work on my throat, maybe.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. I was going to ask you earlier, but I didn't know you were to save that till later. Okay. Yeah. So just relax for me, okay? All right. So now what do you notice?
I noticed that I felt something kind of go like air go through, but I noticed that it doesn't feel as like there's much stuff in there as there was. Like it feels a little lighter.
Relax one more time for me. All right, now let's see what you notice.
Yeah, it feels better. Feels better. Yeah, before it felt like there was just so much activity going on in there, and it's this constant cough that wanted to happen. But yeah, it feels like it calmed down a lot.
Did you see the video I posted today of that 13-year-old boy?
Yeah. He was coughing every 60 seconds or so.
Yeah. I mean, and that was pretty amazing. But and I don't know when I edited it if it's still in there. But he'd had ear infections for the last month and a half, and he hasn't been able to hear out of his ears really for that long. And his ears all of a sudden cleared up, and his sinuses all of a sudden cleared up as well.
Well, that in itself is so cool, because that's like, when you're walking around like that, it's just horrible. It's a horrible feeling.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of funny too, because he had said at the beginning about not being able to hear his mom. And then when he said all of a sudden, "Oh, I can hear my mom again," he kind of thought about it like, maybe I don't want to be able to hear my mom.
Well, there we go. Yeah. Who knows why he got to that point then? Yeah. That's amazing. So, what I'll do is I'll put a link below so everybody can find out where your group is and where your fan page is. And then we'll also, I'll put the different membership sites there so people know what they're going to get.
Yeah.
And how can they get inside your membership program?
Well, for right now, all they need to do is just message me, and we'll figure out how to get them signed up. Hopefully here in the next few weeks, it'll be automated a little bit better, and they can just go to my website and sign up that way.
Awesome. So just message Mikael on Facebook, and he'll be sure to reach out to you. And if you have any more questions about it, he'll let you know what it's all about. And if you need a one-on-one healing, I definitely recommend it. If you're tired of certain amount of pain that you've been having, or sickness, or whatever it is, Mikael just is so amazing at this, and he's so passionate about it, and he cares so much. And I highly recommend that you get in contact with him and just go for it, because and to get into that $27 a month membership right now, and you'll have tons of healings going on.
Yeah. And I'm doing lives, too, all the time.
Right.
I have one this weekend that I'm doing as well. I don't know when you're posting this, but yeah, on Saturday.
Saturday at what time?
It's at 11:00 Pacific
time. Okay. And I'll put that down there as well.
Yeah, so it actually might be 10. I don't know, but it's Saturday morning.
Saturday morning. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, Mikael. Thank you so much for getting on Positive Out Loud, and for putting out, and just like from where you were, you're saying you had all these things going on in your body, your knees, your hips, the drugs, all that stuff, where you came from to where you are now is just, like you said, it's like a slideshow. Things can change in an instant, right?
Yeah.
And your life is totally transformed. And that's why I love having people on the show like this, so I can give other people out there inspiration to know that their lives can change in a dime as well.
Well, and I think that's probably the most important thing. If I was to explain, like, what is this? Like, what is the reason and all that? I mean, life is difficult, right? You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. I mean, things happen, and then all of a sudden we get into that place of thinking that it's never going to change. Right? That however things are going is going to be how it's going to continue to go. And we've just kind of just formulated the easiest way to not be here anymore. Right? So this is just about showing people that, oh, wait a second, maybe there is a little bit more possible than what I thought was possible.
What if life could be full of like joy and love and just adventure?
Yeah.
And pain and suffering, right?
Yeah.
It's possible.
It is possible. I see it happen all the time.
It happened in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's happened in many people's lives. So again, thank you so much.
A number of different times in a number of different situations, right? Like I know that it's possible because I was addicted to drugs for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's possible because I was in prison for 2 years. I know that's possible because I was kidnapped at one point. I've been shot at. I mean, all that stuff that happened
Oh, wow.
portion of my life. I went through a divorce, not thinking that ever was going to happen. Right? I've struggled with the pain and all that kind of stuff. Right? I mean, I know that things are possible because I've already experienced them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I can come into situations with quite a bit of knowing, which allows me to help a broad range of people.
And no judgments. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because I'm the last one that wants to judge anybody, because I want to be able to not have to hold myself accountable anymore for the things that I have done, as long as I just choose to do different things.
Things that will help empower and just bring amazing beauty and love to the world. That's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Any last words you want to say?
Well, when you were saying that just there, I had a thought that too often we think that we are what we have done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Instead of, if we want to be something different, all we need to start doing is doing different things. Right? So it's stepping into that new moment in time and just being whatever it is you want to be. And don't bring any of that, what you have been, right? Because as soon as somebody starts doing something different, they're no longer what they have been doing.
Right.
Right now, the world might want to hold them accountable and tell them that what they're doing isn't real, but it's all about what you're doing at that moment in time. That's who you're being.
You're just creating different choices, different habits, right?
Yeah. Right. Like if you've been dishonest, start being honest, and then you're an honest person.
It's that simple. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, if you can hold that space and withstand not only your own criticism, but sometimes everybody else's, right? Mm-hmm. If you want something to be different, then just do different things.
Right. Absolutely.
Cool.
So if you want something different out there, folks, be sure to connect with Mikael, because he'll help you. He'll be a space for infinite possibilities for your life. He'll have that. He'll just hold that space for you, and you will see how things can shift very quickly.
Cool.
Thank you.